When dinosaur fossils were first pulled from the ground, the appearance of the creatures was anyone's guess. And how they lived was beyond comprehension. But from Argentina to Wyoming, great discoveries and bold new thinking suggest these ancient creatures were faster, more agile, and more complex than once imagined. "65 million years after the last dinosaurs vanished, they're more popular than ever. They've escaped from museums and invaded our popular culture, spawning a renaissance of the dinosaurs." For over 150 million years, a group of animals unlike any today ruled our planet. The dinosaurs. Their great success demands that we understand them. But their remains are silent. Today, scientists like Jack Horner are struggling to find what they were really like. Horner is one of the paleontologists responsible for redefining our modern image of dinosaurs. His groundbreaking discoveries and keen insights have helped answer questions that have lingered for more than 100 years. His pioneer status attracts volunteers from all over the United States to Montana for his crash course in dinosaur excavation. The students live in traditional Native American teepees, designed to withstand howling winds that sweep off the nearby Rocky Mountains. Horner believes that the focus of paleontology is changing. Instead of settling for knowing what dinosaurs looked like, we now need to know how they lived.
In the old days, people were looking for display pieces. They were looking for things to put in museums. So they would go out, they would find a dinosaur. They were looking for individual dinosaurs, and they were looking for something big. So they'd go out, they'd find a dinosaur, they'd dig it up, they'd bring it back, they'd prepare it, they'd put it on display, and then they'd go look for another one. And they weren't doing science. It was more in line with sort of the P.T. Barnum spirit. Nowadays, most of us, I think, are very interested in how dinosaurs live.
In the 1970s, Horner's research led him to the debate over the link between dinosaurs and birds, an issue that's nagged paleontologists almost since the beginning of the science. As early as 1839, dinosaurs were classified as reptiles, even though some had hip bones like modern birds. Not much was made of the similarity until 1861, when an astonishing fossil was pulled from a German quarry. Named Archaeopteryx, it looked like a small dinosaur, but with one major difference: it had feathers. Some scientists would later declare it the missing link between birds and dinosaurs. But others refuted the idea because it lacked the specialized collarbone, a wishbone considered to be the fundamental trait of birds and their ancestors. The dinosaur bird theory gathered academic dust for 100 years. In 1978, Horner found some hard evidence to all but resolve it. A chance encounter in a Montana rock shop led him to the discovery of a lifetime. Horner and a colleague were in their first year as excavators when they stopped at a small fossil shop in Bynum, Montana, not far from the Canadian border. The owners were delighted when Horner was able to identify some of the fossils on display.
The bones that she had found turned out to be a large duck-billed dinosaur. And as I was leaving the shop, she said, "Oh, by the way, there are a couple little bones here I would like you to look at." And she pulled out two tiny little bones, both of which I immediately recognized as baby duck-billed dinosaur bones.
Horner was astonished. He knew how incredibly rare baby dinosaur bones were and how much could be learned by finding more. The shop owners agreed to close up early and take the dinosaur hunters to where the bones had been found. In pasture lands just east of the Rocky Mountains, they showed Horner the source. It would become the wellspring from which most of his future research would flow. He proceeded to uncover numerous bones of baby dinosaurs buried in a bowl-shaped depression that he determined was a nest. It was a historic find. The first nest of baby dinosaurs ever discovered. What's more, that bones belonged to a previously unknown kind of duck-billed dinosaur. Nearby, he discovered hundreds more bowl-shaped depressions and realized that he'd found an entire nesting area. Many of them held fossilized eggs. He called the new site Egg Mountain. Only once before had dinosaur eggs and nests of this scale been found. In 1923, the American Museum of Natural History in New York sent the flamboyant Roy Chapin Andrews on a lavish expedition to the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. The expedition found a total of 50 eggs, individually and in nests. They wrapped their treasures in camel hair and loaded them in crates to carry home. Horner's find was even more impressive. It yielded eggs, babies, and for the first time, actual dinosaur embryos inside their eggs, 70 to 80 million years after they were formed. The discoveries gave him the chance to study the development of dinosaurs from embryo to hatchling to adult. Much of his research focused on one question. After dinosaurs hatched, did they act more like birds or like reptiles? Reptiles emerge from the egg with strong legs and are able to fend for themselves right away. But hatchling birds are too weak to care for themselves. A parent must remain at the nest, feeding them until they can stand on their own, a significant behavioral difference. Horner suspected that at least some dinosaurs cared for their young, as birds do. He looked for evidence in the eggs and the bones of the baby dinosaurs. The eggs were deposited in clusters, and it often takes brute force to free them from the surrounding rock. A more delicate touch is used to scrape away the finer particles. Finally, the specimens are wrapped in burlap and plaster to be transported back to the museum for further study. In the lab, Horner and his colleagues began experiments to determine if baby dinosaurs could stand on their own when they emerged from their eggs. They needed to look at the structure of the hatchling's leg bones. Strong bones meant they could stand on their own and leave the nest like reptiles. Weak bones would suggest more helpless, bird-like behavior. Could a discovery combined with ingenuity bring us closer to understanding dinosaurs? It has before. Every discovery advances our knowledge of what the dinosaurs were really like, And it goes beyond science. The more dinosaur experts learn about these bizarre creatures, the more fascinating they become to the public. Throughout the world, hundreds of museums display thousands of dinosaur fossils to satisfy the growing interest. And if people can't get to the museum can sometimes come to them. DinoFest International is an annual exhibition of dinosaurs and ancient life from around the world. In 1996, in a 2-week period, nearly 200,000 people flocked to see prehistory come alive. They were joined by world-renowned dinosaur experts, artists, and merchandisers. DinoFest was the brainchild of paleontologist Don Wolberg at the Philadelphia Academy of Natural Sciences.
We have dinosaurs for the first time put in one place from every continent. So there are people interested in the wonderful animals from China, dinosaurs from Canada, US. Of course, T-Rex is extremely popular and unpopular, scares some kids.
Scaring kids and adults alike are the recent Jurassic Park movies, which have tallied the highest box office receipts of all time. But perhaps the most stunning example of the public's soaring fascination with dinosaurs was seen at Sotheby's. In 1997, the New York auction house put Sue, the most complete T-Rex skeleton yet found, on the block.
At $700,000, now bidding at $800,000, now bidding at $900,000, now bidding at $9. At $900,000, now bidding at $9. At $900,000 now, 2 bids at $1 million. At $1 million, now bidding at $1 million. Now $1.1 million. 5.4 million. Telephone up front. 5.5. 5.6. 5.7. 3 places. 5.7's in the center of the room still. It's up front then at $7,600,000. Fair warning then at $7,600,000. Up here. $7,600,000.
The highest bidder was the Field Museum in Chicago. For a single specimen, it spent $7.6 million. It was the most ever paid for a dinosaur. It seems that 65 million years after their extinction, dinosaurs are conquering the Earth again. Today, what remains of these once flourishing creatures is enough to draw huge crowds and excite the imaginations of scientists and the public alike.
If I were a dinosaur, which dinosaur would I want to be? The biggest one.
If I was a dinosaur, I think I would want to be Tyrannosaurus rex.
I think I'd like to be a turtle and watch dinosaurs.
The Triceratops.
A brontosaurus.
Maybe.
T-Rex.
For me, they were the hook that captured me in a career in science. And among the topics I care about are dinosaur extinction, how they lived, what they ate, recreating worlds of the ancient past.
DinoFest is just one of the latest events that brings the dinosaurs world back to life. For over a century, scientists have displayed their discoveries to an admiring public, even as they struggled to understand what these creatures were really like from the first meager discoveries. The first public display of dinosaurs was in 1854. It occurred at Crystal Palace Park, just outside of London. Some 40,000 people came to see life-size sculptures of long-vanished creatures. On the banks of a man-made lake stood replicas of many ancient animals. And on islands lurked the most popular sculptures by far, the dinosaurs. Huge and hulking. For the first time ever, scientists had collaborated with artists to put flesh on their bones. Each reconstruction represented the best that science had to offer. It was thrilling and a bit strange to a public just getting used to the concept of extinction. Recreating three-dimensional sculptures from the bones of extinct animals had been a tremendous undertaking. English sculptor Benjamin Hawkins was hired to build the creatures under the supervision of scientists. But very few dinosaur bones had been found by 1853, so the sculptures required some educated guesswork. Hawkins used a mix of creatures as his models: lizards, crocodiles, and rhinoceros. He labored for years on the project. As it neared completion, he held an unusual dinner party. Distinguished guests were served inside the belly of an unfinished dinosaur model. Hawkins had good reason to celebrate. The Crystal Palace exhibition became the crowning glory of a new science that was just beginning to understand dinosaurs. Through the ages, people had probably always come across dinosaur fossils, but had no idea what they were. In the 3rd century AD, dinosaur bones discovered in China were thought to be the remains of dragons. Ancient Greeks believed they were from a race of giants. It wasn't until the 18th century that Europeans, on the brink of the Industrial Revolution, started to question what the strange bones found in their mines and quarries were all about. When the first bones were found, the idea of extinction and the age of the Earth were virtually unknown. No one understood where the bones could have come from or how old they were. But the work of a few leading scientists would soon provide an explanation. In 1799, French anatomist Georges Cuvier began comparing the newly discovered bones to those of living creatures. He noted similarities and declared the bones were very old and the animals they came from no longer existed. It was a radical idea that launched the science of paleontology, the study of ancient life. In 1818, Oxford professor William Buckland applied Cuvier's ideas to a partial skeleton he found in an English quarry. He noted the similarity to bones of modern reptiles and named this new creature Megalosaurus, or Great Lizard. 5 years later, English Dr. Gideon Mantell found a huge jaw. The teeth resembled those of an iguana, so he called the creature Iguanodon. As more discoveries came to light, English anatomist Richard Owen in 1841 published a paper in which he classified these new creatures in a single group called Dinosauria, meaning terrible lizards. From then on, they would be known as the dinosaurs. Later, Owen would supervise Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins as he recreated the new discoveries at Crystal Palace. They were works of tremendous imagination, but were based on limited information and riddled with inaccuracies. Megalosaurus was shown as merely a scaled-up version of a generic reptile, ambling on 4 legs. Now we know it stood upright, a swift, 2-legged predator like T-Rex. Iguanodon was also shown as a 4-legged behemoth, with a spike on its nose. Today we know Iguanodon ran on 2 legs. The horn on its snout was actually a defensive spike protruding from its thumb. The sculptures, more fanciful than real, created an image of dinosaurs as giant, lumbering lizards. But the creators of the Crystal Palace exhibition did the best they could with the little information they had. In the following decade, the picture of dinosaurs would begin to change. Across the Atlantic, knowledge of dinosaurs grew with the discovery of more fossils. As settlers flooded the American West in the 1870s, fossils began turning up in the exposed sediments of the dry and barren regions called Badlands. Soon museums in the East sent prospectors to Wyoming and Montana to hunt dinosaurs. They came back with new and far more complete specimens than any found before. As the diggers brought in one new kind of dinosaur after another, scientists vied to classify and name them. The work became an obsession for paleontologist Othniel C. Marsh of Yale and Edward Drinker Cope of the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia. Both were extremely ambitious, and both were after the same thing: to outdo each other by discovering and identifying the most dinosaurs. Their bitter competition took many forms. In 1868, Marsh pointed out that Cope, in a scientific journal, had put the head of the giant sea reptile Elasmosaurus on the wrong end. Mortified by his mistake, enraged at Marsh, Cope tried to buy back all copies of the journal before they reached his peers. When a new fossil bed was uncovered in 1877 at Como Bluff, Wyoming, both Cope and Marsh sent crews to stake their claim. Rival prospectors were said to engage in fistfights, even smashing fossils in the opposing camp. On one expedition, Marsh hired 2 Army scouts as escorts. One of them was William F. Cody, better known as Buffalo Bill. As thorny as it was, the competition between Cope, Marsh, and other dinosaur hunters produced a huge trove of fossils. They uncovered many new species, producing a great leap in our knowledge of dinosaurs. Soon others would head west to dig up prehistory. One of these pioneers was Barnum Brown of the American Museum of Natural History in New York. In 1902, he discovered the bones and teeth of a giant carnivore. He sent his treasure back to the museum for study. So impressive were the bones that director Henry Fairfield Osborn dubbed the frightening new predator Tyrannosaurus rex, the tyrant lizard king. Beginning in 1897, the public image of the new discoveries was shaped by artist Charles Knight. Originally hired by Cope and Osborn to portray dinosaurs in scientific journals, Knight was soon commissioned to paint reconstructions of the beasts for magazines and museums. Early in his career, Cope and Osborn asked him to paint and sculpt their dinosaurs as agile and active, running, jumping, and fighting. Quite a change from the Crystal Palace dinosaurs. By the 1920s, the idea of dinosaurs as quick and dynamic caught Hollywood's imagination, as seen in The Lost World in 1925. The depiction, though loosely based on scientific theory, was probably chosen more for its thrill potential. By the 1940s, for some unknown reason, science had returned to its previous view of dinosaurs as slow-moving, cold-blooded, and dim-witted. Knight reflected this view in 1942, when he wrote and illustrated an article for National Geographic magazine. He described the dinosaurs as harmless and stupid, and showed them lumbering across the landscape, dragging their tails or wallowing in swamps. Soon, pop culture would embrace that image. Moronic, plodding dinosaurs began turning up around every corner. But in the last 20 years, our knowledge has soared with the bounty of new fossils. In the 1960s, a fresh crop of paleontologists was making new discoveries and re-examining old assumptions. What they found led them to question the notion of dinosaurs as lumbering beasts. Blazing the path was a brash young paleontologist named Bob Bakker. In 1969, he began arguing that although dinosaurs shared some features of slow-moving, cold-blooded reptiles, anatomically, they looked more like agile, warm-blooded animals. Nearly 30 years later, he continues to find evidence to support his ideas. Like this trackway in central Wyoming, where a herd of dinosaurs once crossed a mudflat. Their tracks are now preserved in stone.
This is the front paw of a great 10-ton brontosaur squishing in and pushing up the mud as it walked. No claw print. The thumb would be there. Great big claw held off the ground. And behind it, the much larger hind paw carrying 3 times as much weight with 3 claws. 1, 2, 3. All chisel-edged, facing outwards. And there are probably several hundred of these guys all walking the same direction. These tracks go 100 yards that way, 50 yards that way. This was one big herd, adults and babies. Crisscrossing the trackways of the brontosaur herd are meat-eating dinosaurs. Some little ones maybe this tall, roughly the weight of a coyote, and some taller, roughly the weight of a big mountain lion, 300-400 pounds. What they were doing, I don't know, but some of them were moving pretty fast. Some of them were going around back the brontosaur herd, some cutting in the front, probably trying to keep out of the way, maybe looking for the small fry, stirred up by these, this enormous weight of unstoppable herbivores.
From the spacing of their prints, Bakker has determined the meat-eating dinosaurs were as fast and agile as mammals.
There's a simple equation that lets you calculate how fast these dinos were going, if you know how tall they were and how long the stride was. Now this meat eater, it's about as tall as I was. Look at this. Can barely do that. I can't walk comfortably with that stride. This guy was running. He was going about 14 miles an hour. Some of the tracks that have been found nearby indicate speeds of up to 40 miles an hour in spurts, and the average speed of all these meat eaters is 7 miles an hour. That's a good clip. That's the clip that coyotes and wolves and hunting dogs and hyenas use when they're scurrying around looking for food. That's a hot-blooded pace.
In 1986, Bakker presented his radical ideas to the public in his book, The Dinosaur Heresies. In it, he illustrated his theories with his own drawings, showing how the anatomy of the dinosaurs made them faster and more agile than reptiles. It was groundbreaking and controversial, but slowly won over many of his critics. He believes past notions about dinosaurs are the result of scientists trying to fill in the missing pieces of a complex puzzle.
This is a wonderful head. This is the head of a kind of brontosaur. This is the head that was on Brontosaurus itself in all the big movies, King Kong, the original Lost World, 1925. This head is a powerful head. It's got these huge teeth here for crushing plants and leaves, a big nostril for hooting, pretty big eye to a wonderful head. And when I grew up and the Brontosaurus skeleton in New York, this wonderful skeleton from Wyoming, this head was on it. It's a wonderful head, but it's the wrong head.
How did early dinosaur experts put the wrong head on the brontosaur? When big dinosaurs died, their remains were often torn apart by scavengers or scattered by floods. Add millions of years on a shifting Earth, and it's easy to see why heads and bodies often went their separate ways.
So it's very rare to find a head, and then a neck, and then a torso, and a tail. You usually find mixed up parts. The first Brontosaurus didn't have a head, but there was a big head from another quarry nearby. Take the body from quarry A, the head from quarry B, put them together. Made sense. They fit pretty good. It was dead wrong.
But as more fossils were discovered, scientists realized their mistake and replaced Brontosaurus heads in their museums. Bacher's hunting ground is Como Bluff in central Wyoming. He returns every summer to search for more dinosaur relics. He's joined by groups of graduate students hoping to make their mark in the field. They'll likely have little to show after a long day in the blistering heat. It's the possibilities that drive them on. The chance to discover a completely new dinosaur, or a complete skull or skeleton. If they're lucky, their finds will add to the continuing wealth of fossils that began in the early 1800s. As the evidence accumulates, new theories are formed, old ones discarded. From sluggish behemoths to fleet-footed upright racers. From cold-blooded to warm-blooded, dinosaurs continue to fascinate as our picture of them becomes clearer. While Bacher was redefining our ideas about the creatures, Jack Horner was in his lab, solving the most compelling dinosaur mystery of all. At Egg Mountain in Montana, Jack Horner's dinosaur eggs provided an opportunity to test whether dinosaurs were bird-like or reptilian. He took his treasure to the Museum of the Rockies in Bozeman and devised an experiment. The answer to his question was written on the bones of the dinosaur hatchlings. If the leg bones were weak, the baby dinosaurs would need parental help, indicating bird-like behavior. But before measuring the strength of the bones, Horner needed to determine which of his specimens were embryos and which were just hatched. A computer enabled him to visualize the largest embryo that could fit inside the egg. Any that couldn't fit must have been hatchlings. Once he identified a hatchling leg bone, he cut a thin cross-section of it. From its microscopic structure, he could determine if it would have been strong enough to bear the creature's weight. He concluded these baby dinosaurs were too weak to stand on their own. They depended on their parents to care for them. Bird-like behavior, never heard of in dinosaurs before. He appropriately named the new dinosaur Maiasaur, the good mother lizard. With his new knowledge about Maiasaur behavior, Horner headed back to Egg Mountain. After years of digging, he concluded that 80 million years ago, the surrounding area was a giant dinosaur nursery. Adult Maiasaurs must have shuttled back and forth to feed their young. It would have been as crowded as the nesting colonies of many seabirds today.
We know they nested in colonies, and some of the nests that we have looks as though the nests were 25, about the length of an average adult apart from one another, which is similar to birds.
From his study of nearby sediments, Horner believes Egg Mountain was once an ancient island, surrounded by a shallow lake, which helped protect the babies from predators. Dinosaurs may have waded out to the island to lay eggs and tend to their young until they were strong enough to leave. Through the accumulation of fossils and the shrewd analysis of paleontologists such as Horner and Bacher, the uniqueness and diversity of the dinosaurs is becoming ever clearer. They were bird-like without being birds, reptilian without being reptiles. The question remains, When did these innovations begin? The answer may lie in the Valley of the Moon. Today, 65 million years after the last dinosaurs disappeared, their fossilized bones are being unearthed. Though the rocks are slow to give up their treasures, scientists have discovered over 330 members of the dinosaur clan. On average, a new type of dinosaur is named every 7 weeks. At the foot of the Andes Mountains in Argentina lies a rugged, barren landscape known as Ischigualasto. In English, the Valley of the Moon. 230 million years ago, this was a dense and shady forest. Stalking through it were small but menacing creatures, the first known dinosaurs. Buried here, along with their bones, is the secret of their dominance. Isolated in the desolate beauty of this barren Argentine landscape, a team of dinosaur hunters hopes to unlock the mysteries of dinosaur evolution. Ischigualasto, the Valley of the Moon, is one of the most productive fossil quarries in the world. Erosion caused by wind and rain, combined with a seasonally dry climate, have exposed layers of sediment dating back almost 300 million years. From a central camp, 80 miles from the nearest town, the team, led by American paleontologist William Sill of the University of San Juan in Argentina, makes daily expeditions to other parts of this 105,000-acre region. Sill has explored this valley for 25 years. It's one of the best places in the world to study the roots of dinosaur evolution and understand what made dinosaurs unique among the other creatures that shared the planet.
This valley is just about the only place in the world where you have a complete sequence of sediments that have fossils in them and that show the story of the origin of the dinosaurs. And that's very rare, very hard to find.
Descending through one of the valley's many canyons, Sill and his colleagues go back millions of years. Each layer of sediment that surrounds them was laid down at a different point in the Earth's history. To understand why the dinosaurs rose to dominance, they must go back to sediments some 230 million years old. It's the first of 3 geologic periods in which the dinosaurs lived, known as the Triassic. It lasted from 248 to 205 million years ago. The middle period is the Jurassic, from 205 to 144 million years ago. It was dominated by the largest known dinosaurs, the sauropods. The last period was the Cretaceous, beginning 144 million years ago. It gave rise to Tyrannosaurus rex, Triceratops, and Velociraptor. Then, 65 million years ago, the Cretaceous ended, and the dinosaurs mysteriously vanished. Dinosaurs were already becoming the dominant species by the middle of the Triassic. To discover the world as it existed when they first appeared, Sill digs in sediments just before that time. The dominant creatures of this earlier period were reptiles that had begun to acquire some features of modern-day mammals. In the Valley of the Moon, one of the most common of these mammal-like reptiles was the cynodont.
This is the skull of a cynodont, one of the mammal-like reptiles, very common here, possibly an omnivore, probably a vegetarian. When you look at the skull, this is how we find them. And it doesn't look like much at first, but if you look closely, you can see the outline of the eyes here, the snout down here, and back here, the large temporal openings where the muscles that pull the jaw together came up through. And here's actually part of the lower jaw sticking up through this opening. Now these were on the line to mammals. They have some of the characteristics of mammals.
Mammal-like reptiles sprawled low to the ground like reptiles. With larger brains and complex teeth like mammals. They seemed to be well on their way to becoming the dominant animals that mammals are today. But then their future was jeopardized. To find out how, Sil takes his expedition higher up the eastern slope at Ishigolasto. The red cliffs hold sediments from the final years of the Triassic period. Here, mammal-like reptile fossils are almost non-existent. In their place are the bones of a new kind of creature, the dinosaur. What happened? Part of the answer comes from one of the earliest dinosaurs found here, Eoraptor, dating from 225 million years ago. It had all the tools necessary to trounce its rivals, the mammal-like reptiles. It was a 10-foot-long, 500-pound meat-eater. Most remarkable were its legs. Its unique knee and hip joints allowed it to move on 2 feet, a bipedal stance that gave it the agility and speed to surpass the low-slung, mammal-like reptiles. It also freed up its forelimbs.
He was bipedal, so his forelimbs were used for grasping, raking, tearing apart the prey.
In addition to its large claws, the skull and teeth of Eoraptor made it a formidable predator.
The things that make him a good dinosaur are these big teeth with serrated edges like a steak knife. And of course the major feature is this secondary jaw joint right here, a sliding jaw joint that allows the tooth-bearing part of the lower jaw to open independently of the rest of the lower jaw that opens from back here. This would have increased the gape of the animal by about 30 degrees and allowed him to manipulate prey up front while still holding tight to it with the rear of the jaw.
Puncture wounds on the skull of Eoraptor are battle scars, apparently from a fight with one of its own.
From the size of the tooth marks on his skull, here we can see 1 or 2 of them. Puncture wounds. There's another puncture wound down here. From the size of these, it looks like it was the same critter. They may have been fighting over a killed prey.
At the time it was discovered, Eoraptor was the most primitive dinosaur ever found. But since it had already developed features similar to later meat-eating dinosaurs, it couldn't have been the first. Instead, it was believed to have been a very early stage in the evolution of carnivorous dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus rex. The search continued for an even more primitive dinosaur. In October 1991, one of Sil's graduate students, Ricardo Martinez, found one. His team uncovered the bones of a dinosaur roughly 3 feet long, barely the size of a dog. It was found in sediments 228 million years old, practically the dawn of the dinosaur age. It was named Eoraptor, the dawn stealer. Since then, Sil's group has found 6 more.
This is a skull of Eoraptor, tremendously important in the history of dinosaurs, because the teeth of this shows that it is a carnivorous dinosaur. The high, narrow skull, the large orbits tell us that it was an active predator. And one of the great things that tells us of its possible ancestor of all the carnivorous dinosaurs is this incipient jaw joint the second joint that allows it to manipulate prey. And that's a major characteristic of all of the later carnivorous dinosaurs. But it also contains the primitive features in the palate. It still has the old primitive teeth. So here we have what I consider to be an ideal ancestor for the later carnivorous dinosaurs.
Living just before Herrerasaurus, Eoraptor had similar features, including a bipedal stance and serrated teeth. But its sliding jaw joint was much less developed. Even so, Sill believes it was a menacing predator that could overpower the mammal-like reptiles.
He was fast, he was agile, and he was probably very vicious. Judging from modern crocodiles and birds, even, you know, if you've seen a rooster, or if you can imagine an ostrich who is a vicious predator with big teeth and claws instead of wings, chasing down a pig or some other animal across the plains, that's probably as close as we can come to visualizing Eoraptor as a predator.
Eoraptor's features were similar to those of Herrerasaurus, but more primitive. Double-jointed jaws, serrated teeth, and an agile stance were too much for the slower, bigger-brained mammal-like reptiles to compete with. By the end of the Triassic period, dinosaurs had replaced them as the dominant animals.
The dinosaurs were faster, were more agile, and were tremendous predators. In this case, it's a question of being fast or being smart, and the smart guys lost.
Sill also discovered that the early meat-eaters had already developed hollow bones, a trait shared by modern birds. They were swift, light, bipedal killers. They cleared the path, allowing later dinosaurs to diversify, grow exponentially in size, and outcompete all other animals on land. This image of dinosaurs is far removed from the picture of them as oversized reptiles, first put forward at London's Crystal Palace Park in 1854. Science once pigeonholed dinosaurs as reptiles, but today we're seeing they shared features with birds and mammals too. They also had their own traits, unmatched by any living animals. Our growing knowledge of dinosaur behavior is now making it possible to bring these creatures back alive. Generations of dinosaur scientists have seen their discoveries transformed into public attractions that bring ancient worlds back to life. Today's version is a theme park being created by Walt Disney Imagineering. Engineers and artists are taking everything we currently know about dinosaurs and making them almost as real as they were 100 million years ago. According to science liaison Casey Brenna, the job still leaves room for interpretation.
One of the challenges of recreating an extinct species of which we only have bones to work with today is interpreting what their body motions, skin colors, and behavior will be. And we find that utilizing, of course, nature as it exists today, and with the new knowledge that probably birds are related to dinosaurs if they aren't actually dinosaurs, has given artists lots of inspiration in how dinosaurs would look, how they would act and behave.
Like their counterparts 150 years ago, dinosaur artists mixed scientific fact with fiction. But today, they have more science to work with. Scientists have found impressions of dinosaur skin, but no clues as to color. For a long time, artists picture them a dull gray. Since it's now believed that dinosaurs are related to birds, artists feel free to use more vibrant colors. Disney's robotic Styracosaurus, a relative of Triceratops, has also gained from the new paleontology. It was once perceived as a lumbering animal, with a huge head stiffly mounted on its body, and front legs splayed to the side like a lizard's. Recent studies show that its head was connected with the limber ball and socket joint. The animal's neck muscles could toss the head in any direction. Though we're getting closer to knowing how dinosaurs lived, moved, and acted, we're still a long way from knowing everything about them, but we're on the right track. 19th century scientists greatly expanded dinosaur science. More recently, men like Jack Horner and Robert Bacher have done the same. Inevitably, the discoveries and theories of today will be disputed in the future. But one of the new ideas is not likely to change, that far from being giant reptiles, dinosaurs were among the most complex, diverse, and successful creatures that ever existed. Millions of years ago, the forest thundered with the footsteps of giant dinosaurs. They were unstoppable and dangerous, at least to the plants. These were the herbivores. Today, dinosaur hunters are using new methods and sheer ingenuity to uncover the bizarre and clever ways plant-eating dinosaurs fended off attackers and devoured vegetation. Experts are revealing how some grew to be the largest animals that ever walked on Earth, and how others relied on magnificent and deadly armor as they struggled to protect themselves. As scientists probe deeper, they're finding out why these seemingly harmless plant eaters were the most plentiful and diverse of all the dinosaurs. Big or small, they ruled the land of the giants. Meet Nancy, the world's largest touring dinosaur. She arches 3 stories into the air, and soon she'll stretch longer than an 18-wheeler. Then she'll be center stage at DinoFest International, a traveling dinosaur exhibition. But first, a road crew must finish unpacking her 250 bones. More than half are real, discovered in Mongolia by a Chinese expedition. The rest are life-size casts. From her frame, scientists can infer much about how she lived, the adaptations and defenses that made her a success. Her great size was her best weapon and most useful attribute. 8-foot ribs once walled in a stomach so big that massive amounts of food might spend days inside, being converted to energy. Long legs as thick as tree trunks could carry her crushing weight for miles with minimal exertion. Her huge feet were twice the size of an elephant's. As they pounded the ground, they left a trail of craters revealing clues to the way she moved and where she went. Nancy's one of a group of the largest dinosaurs called sauropods. Their remains are found in Jurassic and early Cretaceous sediments, about 200 to 100 million years old. That's when they were the dominant plant-eating dinosaurs. Sauropods had a variety of features that fell between 2 extremes. On one hand was Diplodocus. It had a long tail, relatively short front legs, and slender pencil-like teeth. On the other was Brachiosaurus. Its front legs were taller, tail shorter, neck more upright, and it had broad spatula-like teeth. Nancy was more like a Diplodocus. Found in the Middle Cretaceous, she was the last of her kind. None were mental giants. Perched atop the long neck was a small skull, which encased a brain estimated at about 1/4 the size of a cow's. At the other end was a huge tail that could send attackers flying with a mere flick. What were these giant dinosaurs really like? How could an animal get so big? It's a puzzle that challenges scientists. While some rely on cutting-edge technology, others seek answers from surprisingly simple experiments. At Indiana-Purdue University, paleontologist Jim Farlow uses a method to estimate just how much sauropods weighed. He starts with a model of the dinosaur. Its precise proportions are based on fossil evidence and scaled down. He submerges it in a container of water and measures how much is displaced. That gives him the model's value. Next, knowing the model's scale, he can figure out the volume of the actual dinosaur and convert it to weight. Farlow's calculations show that a large sauropod might have weighed nearly 60 tons.
The really biggest sauropods, the ones that would have been at the upper end of the size range, you may be talking about animals that would have weighed 10, maybe even 20 times as much as a large elephant. And that's just something that your mind finds hard to comprehend.
As often happens in science, solving one puzzle leads to another.
So the obvious question is, why were they able to get so big when very few land mammals have been able to do the same thing? Well, truth in advertising here, I don't know, if you want the absolute truth, but I can offer some educated guesses.
Farlow and other scientists believe the sauropods era had become greener than the one before it. Evidence shows that carbon dioxide levels rose. Since plants use carbon dioxide as food, plant life flourished. With more food to eat, sauropods could grow to enormous sizes. But Farlow thinks these plants were low-grade and nutrient-poor. How then did sauropods grow and stay huge on such inferior food? To learn more about large plant-eating animals, Farlow is visiting Jed Friel's farm in Auburn, Indiana.
Jason's up there. You want to ride along?
Yeah, sure.
He'll get the gates for us.
Jed raises herds of today's most famous plant eaters, cows.
How much of that would one cow need in a day?
Well, you know, it takes about a half a bale a day per cow, is what we kind of figure in the wintertime. We like to see them have about 25 pounds of hay per cow to get them through the winter every day.
Digesting hay is a complicated matter. Once it's swallowed, it's softened in one of the cow's 4 stomachs. Microorganisms then break it down even more, extracting vitamins. Then it's regurgitated and chewed again, known as chewing the cud. Sauropods also had help digesting. Some scientists believe they swallowed stones called gastroliths, like modern birds do. The gastroliths may have rolled around inside their stomachs or gizzards, grinding the vegetation into small digestible bits. Also, according to Farlow, it takes a long time for food to pass through a huge animal's enormous digestive tract, giving microorganisms more time to extract nutrients. So sauropods could digest even the poorest quality plant material.
I like to say the equivalent of shredded newspaper. And I suspect that sauropods could get by on that stuff. They were among the best herbivores that have ever lived, I suspect, in their ability to survive on really crummy food.
Sauropods were built to eat. They took full advantage of whatever plant life grew around them. But how much food did one of these giants eat? Well, if Jed was feeding sauropods instead of cows, he'd probably need a lot more land.
Jed was telling me that a 1,000-pound cow, if you were going to pasture it, about 10 acres, which is about the size of the field that we've got around us here. If we want to compare that with what a sauropod is doing, a 50-ton sauropod that's warm-blooded, you're probably looking at something like 270 acres, which is basically a little bit farther than as far as you can see from this hill we're on.
A single sauropod could consume almost 700 pounds of vegetation in a day. That's if it were warm-blooded. But not all scientists are convinced dinosaurs were warm-blooded. In fact, Farlow thinks warm-blooded sauropods would have devastated plant life so fast, nothing would have been left for them to survive on. So they must have been cold-blooded. Warm-blooded animals like cows need to keep their internal temperature high by eating lots of food. Cold-blooded animals like lizards rely on the sun for warmth and eat less. If cold-blooded, a sauropod would still need to eat almost 250 pounds of plants every day. Whether warm-blooded or cold, sauropods must have had voracious appetites. They amble through forests, devouring the scenery. With each thunderous step, they left a trail of clues hinting at their behavior. Tracks that are now being uncovered millions of years later by a new breed of dinosaur expert. Flying high in the sky, dinosaur expert Christian Mayer has spotted traces of huge dinosaurs in a Swiss mountain range known as the Jura, the place where the Jurassic period of the age of dinosaurs got its name. He's discovered dinosaur trackways here, covering an area 3 times the size of New York City. It's called a mega track site. Mayer knows that bones can tell a lot about anatomy, but only tracks can reveal clues about the movements of dinosaurs. Mayer also knows that it takes years of experience to interpret tracks. So he's asked track expert Martin Lockley from the University of Colorado at Denver to help. The first order of business for Lockley, Mayer, and assistant Dorothy Hippler is to map the track site using aerial photographs.
And the same with these over here, for example.
They examine the photos to establish the pattern and direction of each trackway, which holds clues to the dinosaur's behavior. But sometimes, irregularities in the rock can masquerade as dinosaur tracks.
Some of these look like tracks, but they're not. So for every good track, there's probably at least one bad one. So there are probably 4 or 5.
So far, Mayer has discovered nearly 15 separate trackways scattered throughout the mega track site. But how did they get here? In the heart of the Jura Mountains. The answer lies in a layer of rock that formed 150 million years ago in the Jurassic period. Back then, the geography here was very different. The continents were just beginning to move apart from the single landmass they had once formed, known as Pangaea. The Jura Mountains were a level shoreline of a now vanished ocean, the Tethys Sea. After dinosaurs trampled a soggy shoreline, sun and wind dried their tracks, which hardened like concrete. The next rainstorm or flood deposited a layer of sediment over the tracks, preserving them. Then, 15 million years ago, as the land masses continued to shift and collide, the shoreline was pushed upward, forming mountains. Sediment covering the tracks eventually eroded, revealing the fossilized prints. Today, Christian Mayer and his team of trackers are piecing them back together step by step.
Oh, look, the slab is still dry, that's okay.
Among his most recent discoveries are trackways at a quarry near the town of Moutier.
Yeah, I wanted to set the rope up there where the casting people come. But take the oldest one. Andy, if you have the
After the aerial photographs, the team must examine the tracks up close. So they've pounded rappelling bolts into the rock to pull themselves up. Studying tracks made by animals millions of years ago is dangerous. To Martin Lockley, the risks are worth taking. He's after the thrill of the hunt.
It really is like being a tracker of modern animals. It's like following a creature that passed by yesterday sometimes. You feel it's much more recent, you know, time doesn't mean anything. You're following a Jurassic animal one day, you're following a recent animal the next day.
Clinging to the rock, Martin and Dorothy give each massive footprint individual attention. To the trackers, the footprints are snapshots of living, breathing creatures.
And we're used to thinking of dinosaurs as skeletons, but these are the evidence of the living animal in motion. People have referred to them as motion pictures of dinosaurs, so they're a very dynamic type of evidence. We can see with the sauropod track, for instance, it had a big fleshy foot like an elephant. So the first thing we learn is the shape of the feet, not the shape of the bones in the foot skeleton that we see in the museum, but the actual shape of the feet.
The prints are scrutinized to identify the kind of dinosaur that made them. These impressions lack fine detail, but their round shape and large size, up to 3 feet across for the hind prints, show that they were made by the burly footpads of sauropod dinosaurs. Next, stride length is measured to figure out how fast the dinosaur was moving. The prints of a slow-moving animal are fairly close together. As it accelerates, its stride lengthens. The distance between the prints and average leg lengths known from skeletons are used to calculate speed. Mayer has determined that these massive creatures were sauntering at about 5 miles per hour, the average walking speed of an elephant. Track sites like these have also changed the way we think about sauropods. When their bones first appeared in the 19th century, scientists speculated that the creatures they belonged to lived in swamps. Water must have provided the buoyancy necessary to carry such enormous weight. And because it was thought that dinosaurs were related to reptiles, some believed they crawled low to the ground, dragging their tails like crocodiles or lizards. But trackways have told a different story. The lack of tail drag marks shows that the animals walked with their tails in the air. The narrow width between each footprint shows they walk with their legs directly beneath their bodies, like modern elephants, a stance that could support their tremendous weight without the help of water. Until now, mapping dinosaur tracks has been a low-tech operation. Today, Christian Mayer is testing a new method that uses lasers and computers. The device fires a beam of light to a small reflector placed in a footprint. By measuring how long it takes for the beam to return, the computer calculates the distance to the footprint.
It's very simple. I can do it like this. I can just put one point on this area, and he's calculating immediately the area, the surface, and surface will appear here.
I'm looking forward to the results. I think this will
be
a great thing.
The depth of each print is also recorded. From the data, the computer will generate a 3D contour map of the site. Because prints of the same depth were made at the same time, Mayer will be able to single out an individual trackway from multiple crossings with the click of a mouse. The new equipment promises to speed up the process of mapping trackways. But for now, the dinosaur trackers rely on slower, time-proven methods. After photographing and measuring the track site, a better picture of what the giant dinosaurs were doing at the ancient shoreline is emerging. The surface of the wall appears to be trampled over many times. It appears that hundreds of sauropods returned here time and again, perhaps to cool themselves. Or maybe lush vegetation along the banks provided a favorite feeding place. As dinosaur trackers follow in the footsteps of giants, active roaming dinosaurs seem to come to life. Elsewhere, a new discovery is fueling a long-simmering debate about how some of the smaller dinosaurs got around. These are the Badlands of North Dakota. 80 million years ago, this region of North America was crisscrossed by rivers and streams, a lush lowland leading to the edge of an inland sea. Throughout this land roamed the most exotic of plant-eating dinosaurs, Triceratops. They lived from about 100 to 65 million years ago, at the end of the final period of the dinosaurs, the Cretaceous. Like most other dinosaurs, they were smaller than the sauropods, but they were large animals in their own right. Some grew as big as a bus. Triceratops was a member of a family of dinosaurs called ceratopsians, creatures armed with a variety of sharp horns and large fan-like shields. But beneath all that remarkable armor is a heated debate that has simmered since these creatures were first discovered. How did they stand? It began in 1896, when the first known illustration of a ceratopsian skeleton appeared on a poster of specimens from Yale's Peabody Museum. The creature was shown with its front legs straight underneath, in an upright stance, like a rhinoceros. But it was a guess. Fossils from several discoveries were combined because a complete skeleton had not yet been found. In the same year, a Triceratops skeleton was mounted by the Smithsonian Museum. Also a composite, it was shown in a sprawling stance, front legs bent crocodile style. To many, an upright stance implies an agile, warm-blooded dinosaur that could charge attackers. A sprawling stance means an animal that's slower, more reptilian, and possibly cold-blooded. With no way to resolve the issue, ceratopsians have been depicted both ways for years. Now a remarkable discovery may end the dispute. In the summer of 1994, William Gartzka, a biologist from the University of Alabama, and paleontologist David Burnham found a fascinating Triceratops in the Badlands of North Dakota. Gardzka had spent weeks scouring the land for dinosaur remains. Then one day, as he was coming over a hilltop, he noticed what looked like a rib bone sticking out of the ground. He contacted Burnham. They put together a crew and set up a dig site. As more and more bones were exposed, Gardzka and Burnham realized they had stumbled upon the most complete Triceratops skeleton ever found. Over millions of years, dinosaur skeletons tend to get broken up and the bones scattered over a wide area. But this skeleton was articulated. Most of the bones were still connected. They named their find Raymond. As Raymond emerged, Gardzka and Burnham could see for the first time the natural position of the front legs. They were straight underneath his body. Raymond and all his ceratopsian kin must have had an upright stance. Had the debate finally been settled? It looked that way, but Ralph Johnson of the Milwaukee Public Museum has some doubts.
Preservation is on these bones.
Before Raymond was found, he made a discovery of his own.
Attach the foot now, so that's got to be rotated around.
On an expedition in 1981, his team found a complete shoulder and front leg of a Torosaurus, another ceratopsian.
Good. Okay. Hang on.
Back in the museum, he devised an ingenious way to test how the bones fit together. He made plastic casts of them, which he connected with metal joints. To simulate muscles, he used elastic straps, affixing them where the bones showed evidence of the actual muscle attachments. Then he hung the 7-foot model from scaffolding and tried walking the leg in both sprawling and upright positions. If the position worked, the bones would stay in their sockets. If not, the bones would slip out. The result surprised him.
In this kind of traditional reptile sprawl with the front leg, everything works. The joints all line up the way they should. The muscles act on the bones the way they should. It works. You can actually get this thing to walk forward, which is what you want it to do. Now, if we go into the other idea, straight underneath the body.
But when Johnson tried to walk the leg underneath the body, the bone could only move sideways, not back and forth.
There's a way to get around that, though.
When he twisted the bone around to make it move back and forth, he found another problem.
Well, now you've got the elbow going in the right direction toward the head of the animal. But now our dinosaur looks a little bit like Popeye with the foot pointing out to the side. So this thing is going to be walking like this. Actually, it won't be walking at all. There's no way biomechanically to get this animal to move forward by putting these legs directly underneath the body.
According to Johnson's experiment, the case was closed. Ceratopsians must have sprawled like crocodiles. But where does that leave Raymond, Gardzka and Burnham's prized discovery?
Raymond's forelimb and hind limb are clearly in an upright position. This is not what you'd expect from a lizard-like posture.
He's standing on his tippy toes, and so that enables him to move at greater speeds, kind of poised like a runner.
In Johnson's version, the shoulder blades are pulled back, enabling the legs to sprawl. But when Gardzka and Burnham uncovered Raymond, they found his shoulder blades much farther forward, allowing his legs to be pushed under the body, an upright stance. Johnson's impressed, but not ready to give in yet. Raymond's bones await further study. Once scientists have had a chance to thoroughly examine them, then the question may be settled. Johnson's already confident about the results.
And I'm glad about Raymond because it's a complete leg. It even has the bones in the hand. We know it's from one individual. And now what they can do is actually try to put those legs together, to put those bones together. And I'm pretty confident that they're going to find that once they try to articulate those bones, get the balls and sockets to line up, that they're not going to be able to get them underneath the body.
With a stance that hints at his behavior, Raymond clutches the secret to how his kind lived. Meanwhile, innovative use of medical technology is revealing how a dinosaur 80 million years older may have died. Stegosaurs were innocent-looking dinosaurs that feasted on Jurassic vegetation about 145 million years ago. But should the need arise, these generally docile creatures had the equipment to defend themselves against predatory dinosaurs. Plates along its back intimidated enemies by making the stegosaur appear larger than it really was, and lethal spikes at the end of a powerful tail could fend off the toughest opponents. But even though the spikes were as lethal as daggers, it seems they could also be a point of vulnerability. July 1992. At a remote location in Colorado, an unusual stegosaur skeleton was uncovered. Trapped at the bottom of a deep gully lay one of the most complete specimens ever found. With most of its bones still embedded in rock, it was prepared for transport out of the canyon.
It'd be better to leave.
Earlier in the excavation, paleontologist Ken Carpenter and his team discovered that the otherwise well-preserved skeleton had a deformed tail spike. It piqued their curiosity. But before they could study it, they'd have to get the stegosaur to the lab. As the final layer of rock was removed, the team faced a problem. The encased skeleton was too heavy to lift. Determined to get it out, they called in reinforcements. A U.S. Army helicopter was sent in to airlift the remains out of the ravine. They could then be taken to the Denver Natural History Museum, where Carpenter could give them a thorough examination. The helicopters are designed to raise 20th century battle tanks. Lifting the remains of a 145 million year old stegosaur wasn't much different. Back in the museum's lab, technicians painstakingly removed the bones from rock. Finally, Carpenter was ready to perform the autopsy. He began by focusing on the disfigured tail spike.
I didn't quite know what to make of it. I thought maybe it was due to crushing from the weight of the rock that was encasing it. I mean, certainly if we look at this more normal spike, we can see that there's quite a bit of difference in the shape.
As Carpenter studied the bony spike, he noticed that it showed signs of healing and regrowth, indicating that it wasn't damaged after death. He also detected small holes on the surface of the bone, suggesting disease. One possibility was a bacterial infection called osteomyelitis. If a bone has been broken and is left untreated, bacteria can invade its marrow, the blood-producing tissue held within a honeycombed structure at the center. Within days, fluid builds up, and the bone develops small holes to relieve the pressure. Eventually, the bone's inner structure is destroyed. The infection can spread throughout the body and cause death. Could this have been the fate of Carpenter's stegosaur? To find out, he would have to look inside the spike. But there was a problem. Doing this would require breaking open the rare fossil, something he wasn't willing to do. The answer lay inside Kaiser Hospital in Denver. Lori McWhinney, one of his lab volunteers, worked there. She suggested using the hospital's CAT scan. Medical technology developed to harmlessly cut through human tissue and bone could expose the spike's interior without destroying it.
I want to see if we can see some detail in that area.
Okay.
First, they scanned a normal spike, the kind found on healthy stegosaurs. Next, the deformed spike. Then the scans were compared.
This represents a normal tail spike. You can see the dense outer bone represented here. The bone marrow is in the center. This is the pathologic spike, and you can see the dense outer bone, but the bone marrow is no longer where it should be.
In the infected spike, the honeycomb structure of the inner bone is gone, a clear indication that it was not crushed by rock, but destroyed by bacteria before the creature died. Now Carpenter can be quite certain the stegosaur suffered from osteomyelitis, possibly caused by a broken tail spike. But how did the dinosaur break its spike in the first place? It may have been a casualty of war. The weapons and armor of stegosaurs are clear to see, but dinosaur expert Bob Bacher has drawn some conclusions about the defenses of sauropod dinosaurs other than size that aren't quite so obvious. He claims to have uncovered the secret of how the sauropod he calls Brontosaurus protected itself.
I'm standing in the unprotected underbelly of Brontosaurus. Right here, there's no bone, there's no cartilage, and above me would be this huge vat of sloshing digestive fluids. We had thought that if you bit Brontosaurus here, you could kill it. We thought that if Brontosaurus sat down hard on a rock back here, could injure its abdomen, but we were wrong. We have just found the first perfect set of Brontosaurus belly armor, rods of bone, up to 3 feet long, which were embedded in the belly muscle, right up here. And these rods of bone have big knobs on them, proving there were strong ligaments in the belly muscle. This would give Brontosaurus the strongest abdomen of any animal that has ever lived. If you were a meat eater and tried to bite here, you'd break your tooth. If you're a meat eater and jabbed a claw in here, it would pull out. And if you're a Brontosaurus, these belly bones and muscles would keep your great sloshing gut stiff and firm if you wanted to move fast left or right, or if you wanted to stand straight up. You see, with a gut protected and stiffened like this, a Brontosaurus could go from all fours to straight up in a few seconds.
But a Brontosaurus was huge, so strong belly or not, lifting its body off the ground required a few fancy tricks with leverage.
Brontosaurus has a strange set of balancing organs. Now, the neck was hollow. All the bones were hollow. And here would be the lungs full of air. But you get back here, and it's all fluid-filled gut. And then the mother of all rumps, these gigantic hip bones and thigh bones surrounded by muscle.
With its light front end and heavy rear, a Brontosaurus was like a seesaw with the weight on one end. Tilting its front end up was no problem.
The animal's designed to go up, and go up quick. Why would you want to tilt up? Well, this is a plant eater. It lived in an environment where the summers were dry, nothing to eat at ground level, but there'd still be leaves, green leaves, on trees, tall trees. By tilting up quickly, you can access foliage that no other plant eater could get.
With its massive legs and long neck, Brontosaurus could reach perhaps 40 feet high. But that flexibility came with a price.
This is the front end of Brontosaurus, and there are two problems here. They're related. Number one, the body is designed to tilt up. That's true. How are you going to get blood from the heart way up to the head? Seems impossible. Problem number two, this animal has a tiny brain, a smaller brain than its ancestors. Brontosaurus evolution was dumbing down. Are the two problems related? Yeah. See, Brontosaurus would survive better if it could rear up and get those plants. The only way to get those plants would be to remove the need for blood to be pumped up to the head. How are you going to do that? Eliminate the brain. In this case, reducing the brain was adaptive. Little brains don't need a constant flow of blood. This is a high-tech, successful 40,000-pound moron.
Perhaps, but not everyone agrees.
There's an alternative theory. It goes like this. Brontosaurus had a heart so big it could pump blood up at the velocity of a fire hose. It could get that blood way up to the head, even when the head was held really high. But what would happen when the Brontosaurus lowered its head? The rush of blood would blow the skull,
off the rest of the skeleton.
We may never know for sure how much heart a Brontosaurus had, but we do know that its kind were huge. And if size was its best defense, then perhaps the safest sauropod would be the most immense, an honor now bestowed on a dinosaur uncovered in the rugged badlands of Argentina. Below the equator, in a region of Argentina known as Patagonia, lies the small town of Plaza Juncal. Its tiny museum is home to the remains of what could possibly be the largest dinosaur that ever lived. With a patriotic touch, it's been named Argentinosaurus. For the past 8 years, paleontologist Rodolfo Correa and his team have been assembling the bones of this previously unknown sauropod from the Cretaceous period. But even with the creature still in bits, Correa believes the massive bones leave no doubt about its size.
The back bones of Argentinosaurus were at least 50% longer than any other vertebra from any other known sauropod around the world.
The bones of Argentinosaurus were first spotted on a remote ranch outside Plaza Juncal in 1988. Word got back to Jose Bonaparte, head paleontologist at the Argentine Museum of Natural History in Buenos Aires. He sent Correa, then a student, on a 1,000-mile journey to inspect the discovery. It didn't take long for Correa to appreciate the bone's importance. Determined to get this giant creature out of the ground, he moved his family to Plaza Juncal, then arranged a job at the little museum, assembled a crew, and started digging. After many months of hard labor, he and his crew freed enough bones to begin taking them back to the museum. Once there, the careful cleaning of the bones progressed, and Correa began to think about the enormous importance of his enormous dinosaur. Argentinosaurus, it seemed, had become the latest in the series of discoveries of the most gigantic dinosaurs. It started a century ago, when dinosaurs were first being unearthed in the American West. A rivalry emerged between two great paleontologists, Philadelphia's Edward Drinker Cope and Yale University's Othniel Charles Marsh. It quickly became one of the most vicious battles in modern science. Hostilities intensified in 1877, when a huge bone bed was discovered near Como Bluff, Wyoming. According to legend, teams sent out by Marsh and Cope lied and cheated, even destroyed fossils to prevent their rivals from collecting them. For 12 years, these destructive wars raged. In the end, Marsh's collectors had unearthed some of the biggest bones ever found. Among them was a nearly complete skeleton Marsh later called Brontosaurus. At an estimated 75 feet in length and 15 feet tall, it stood about as high as a one-story building and spanned the length of about 5 mid-sized cars. A new giant appeared in 1910, when the Berlin Museum mounted one of the biggest dinosaur excavations of all time in East Africa. 500 men labored to dig out 250 tons of dinosaur bones. Their greatest prize was Brachiosaurus. With a height of 40 feet and a length of 85 feet, it remains the biggest dinosaur ever assembled in a museum. It was taller than a 3-story building and as long as 6 cars. 70 years would pass before a bigger dinosaur was discovered. In 1979, in Colorado, a dinosaur was found that was so big it was called Ultrasaurus. It stood 9 feet at its shoulders, possibly stretching more than 100 feet in length. It's likely to have towered 4 stories high and spanned as long as 7 cars. 6 years later, from a rocky outcrop in New Mexico, came the longest dinosaur ever found, the earthshaker, Seismosaurus. It had a horizontal posture, but Seismosaurus still may have reached a height of a 3-story building. With its long whip-like tail, it's estimated to have spanned 150 feet, nearly the length of 9 cars. And what about Argentinosaurus? How does it compare? It could have been nearly 120 feet in length and 60 feet in height, 5 stories high and nearly 8 cars long. In overall size, Korea believes Argentinosaurus to be the biggest dinosaur ever found.
The bones of Argentinosaurus are representing an animal 100 tons in weight, which is equivalent to 20 African elephants all together at the same time and at the same body.
Today, Korea's team has uncovered all the bones they're likely to find. Now Korea faces a new challenge, finding a building large enough to house them. How long will Argentinosaurus hold its record? No one knows for sure, but a new challenger is already gearing up to take the field. Dinosaur hunting used to mean digging vast amounts of earth to find fossils. Geophysicist Alan Witten from the University of Oklahoma hopes to change that. He's merged firearms and computer technology with geophysical knowledge and come up with a method to locate dinosaur bones deep underground. Witten has come to help a colleague find the remains of a giant sauropod from the early Cretaceous, about 110 million years ago. It might be a future record breaker, but they need to find more of it to be sure.
By the time we get out there,
here in southeastern Oklahoma, paleontologist Richard Cifelli and his team have already dug out 3 gigantic neck bones.
Our guess is that this bone here is about the 7th bone down in the neck, sort of towards the middle of the neck series. And it's a good deal larger than Brachiosaurus. I mean, this is a lot bigger than Brachiosaurus, which is a huge, huge animal. So this could rival the very biggest of described dinosaurs. How y'all making out down here?
But just when Cifelli thought he might be on his way to discovering the biggest dinosaur ever, his luck ran out.
We found this neck, and then it just abruptly came to an end. And so we're missing the vast majority of this huge, huge animal. Where is it? You can't just dig forever. It's just not practical.
It was time to call in Alan Witten and his gear. First, the overlying soil must be scraped away and the ground flattened. Then Witten can start looking for more bones. He uses a huge 8-gauge shotgun mounted on wheels. When fired, it sends sound waves into the earth. The vibrations are detected by an assortment of buried microphones. Sound waves travel more quickly through the dense bone than the sandy soil, so they arrive at the microphones first. A computer analyzes the patterns of waves, then reveals the location of the underground objects. With his device, Witten might just be able to tell Cifelli where to dig next.
What I'm planning is to run the gun down the tape measure in this direction, shooting it every 2 feet, and what we'll get is a vertical slice, an image of a vertical slice right below this tape measure. Is that all right?
With the array of microphones in place and signaling to the computer, Witten begins. His assistant stays with the computer to confirm transmission.
Now, what do we have?
Even with help from technology, it's hard locating dinosaur bones deep underground. But Witten won't give up so easily. he's brought along other devices. One of the most promising is ground-penetrating radar, or GPR. It's been used for years in archaeology, but now it's being adapted to paleontology. Instead of sound waves, GPR beams radio waves into the Earth. Radio waves respond to the chemical composition of an object instead of density, and the results are easier to read. If the waves hit an object underground with the chemical composition of bone, they'll bounce back to the surface, showing up as an isolated blip on the computer screen. Despite technological advances, sometimes bones are still found by sheer luck. Cifelli found a few more while bulldozing the site.
We just stopped just in the nick of time with a bulldozer. That came down to like about this level, right where we had those bags. We've gone another 3 or 4 inches, this would have been hamburger.
If Witten's work proves successful, it will prevent close calls like this and revolutionize dinosaur hunting. But the use of geophysics in dinosaur exploration is in its early stages, and this time the giant's bones have proven elusive, so the challenge will have to wait. With further refinements, Witten is confident that his technology will be a wave of the future that will help us see deep into the past. The subtle designs of plant-eating dinosaurs don't yield clues easily. But today's technology has aided in piecing together the adaptations and behaviors that allow them to flourish in a world of vicious predators. In the end, it's the energy and imagination of men and women that have helped us to better understand these unique dinosaurs and recreated a world that was lost millions of years before the first human walked the earth. Today, the bones of perhaps only 1% of all the dinosaur species that live have been uncovered. Imagine what's still waiting to be found.